All right. Welcome everybody to another live episode of Wrench Factor. We're just getting going, so we'll let you guys come in and join us. But man, it has been a lot of fun being a interim guest host on Wrench Factor. You know, we get to go out and break down a lot of conversations, technology that are really shaping modern maintenance and manufacturing. And we have a fun one today. We have a brand who is world famous, who has been in Super Bowl halftime videos, commercials across the world. America's Got Talent, I think, is another one. But we're not about this show today. We're about talking about how is this technology impacting manufacturing, how it's impacting manufacturing, how it's impacting the maintenance that a lot of end users are using every day. So welcome to the show, John Weiler. John, man, my friend, my rival in college football. Welcome.
Hey, happy to be here, Jake. Thank you so much. Yeah, really excited to share more, with the entire community here about some of the outcomes that our customers, our partners experience around the world.
So give us a little bit of background, just how you got in the industry, man. You come from a background of robotics, of being and touching AI before AI was even a hashtag trending word on X. Tell us about your background and also what you're doing now at Boss Dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a little bit different path, right? So I started a technology company and dropped out of college, and I sold that company after about 4.5 years. And that's that was the catalyst for me getting into advanced manufacturing. And I joined a robotics company here in Columbus, Ohio. Got to see them go from pre-revenue to a significant amount in ARR, and that's what parlayed me into Boston Dynamics. And just like you mentioned, it's kind of an iconic brand. I think anyone who is looking to break into robotics, it's kind of one of those companies where if you have the opportunity to get there, you go after it.
Yeah, absolutely. So today there's a lot of conversations around humanoid robotics, and we're not talking about that today. So if you came here to talk about what the latest is happening in humanoids, you know what? That's for maybe a future discussion down the road. I want to talk about. I'm going to pull it up. I want to talk about this guy. And this is our quadruped friend. I'm sure you got a few models, around as well. This is our quadruped friend. Yep, we got the Lego one here as well. If you guys are liking these, maybe we can figure out how John can get some to you. Leave a comment.
Absolutely.
Down below. We'll see if you guys can get some. But this is a robot dog called Spot. What Spot came to market? When did Spot officially go to market as a product?
Yeah, so late 2019, early 2020. And
Okay.
That's something that we talk about often, right? We've been out in the field for 6 years now.
And what I want to talk about today is you guys have now deployed over, I think, 1,500. At least I know that's the last official. You probably know a more official number, but at least 1,500 of these quadruped robot dog Spots into all different industries. And I want to talk about manufacturing today. I guess it doesn't have to be manufacturing; it could be infrastructure as well. I think that's a big thing. Utilities and power and all this areas, but. Let's talk about the struggles that manufacturing companies face around maintenance and what is Spot doing. So I guess let's open the platform. I'm gonna let you steer the direction on where you want to go with what you're doing and what you're seeing in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we've got thousands of robots now in about 50 countries around the world. And Spot does primarily, it walks around facilities. It collects data in a very consistent and reliable way, and then it feeds that data to multiple stakeholders throughout the organization that allows them to do things like increase wrench time, which I know this is called the wrench factor.
Yeah.
And so, it's just one of those things, or time on tool, right? And you mentioned about the struggles of maintenance and reliability teams. It's a capacity issue, right? I mean, the backdrop of almost every conversation I'm in is this labor shortage. That's been happening, since me and you met. And it's only going one direction, right? And so if you're a maintenance and reliability tech and you have a backlog of work orders, you're not going to start your day walking around carrying sensors to collect data. And it has nothing to do with that. It's not important and critical to collect that data. It's, again, just a bandwidth issue.
Yeah.
And Spot gives time back to those maintenance reliability teams. It automates those tasks, those PM routes and rounds, so that the customer can focus on that backlog of work orders and they don't have any surprises or unplanned downtime.
And I think that's such a great highlight. A robot is doing a mundane task, right? Maintenance is not oftentimes I want to say it's not a glamorous job, but it's one of those things you don't want to be doing the boring stuff. There's no joy in maintenance going around with a clipboard, going up to a piece of equipment that is halfway across your 400,000 square foot production facility to go and look at the temperature of a broiler, a boiler, to see what your, ratio, your steam production, ratio is, or go out there to look at, okay, what's the temperature on this bearing. So when you're going out there and you're talking to customers in the industry, what are they telling you? You touched on briefly about skilled trades and the lack of available labor, but what are the true pain points that these end users are facing? They're saying this is where we think a robot maintenance tool can help solve our problems.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll give you the answer that I hear most often, and it's industry agnostic, right? It's the labor shortage and the skilled trade gaps is one element of it. When you start to break it down, you start to get into how is a customer, like how can someone spend their time throughout their day, right? So there's already a shortage on the available time that they have, the available workforce, the talent pool. And then when you go a layer deeper, these people are dealing with, do I go and walk a couple hours, right? So the size of your facility, that's a very real thing. It sounds trivial, but walking up to 2 or 3 stories to get on to a top of a paper machine to walk down to a basement, and that's just one example in that industry, it takes time, right? And so that's time that you could be fixing equipment. Almost every plant that we walk, they're making a calculated decision on risk. And what I mean by that is people know they have steam leaks. People know they have air leaks. Some might even have gas leaks. And this is a choice that they're having to make, is I can either go and fix this bearing that could shut down the line, and everyone knows kind of the cost of an hour of downtime, right? Yeah. Or I can go and put energy back into the system by fixing these air, steam, and gas leaks all throughout my facility. Mm-hmm. So it is a constraint of time. And then you also have a lot of areas, right? I mentioned the paper machine. Going underneath one of these machines, and they're kind of the size of a football field, right?
Yeah.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous, right? So you're going into a basement where there's confined spaces, there's moving equipment, and there's PP&E that's required. Some of these rooms you can't even go in because of the types of materials that are happening, the types of gases. You would have to do a shutdown of a line to be able to access some of these areas. So there's the constraint on time. There's also confined spaces and safety considerations as well. These are some of the top things that we hear.
And so I do want to talk a little bit about the product. So, I have a Lego Spot robot here. Now, the interesting thing is I always called it the Spot as, and maybe there's newer terminologies, but I always called it the mobile IoT sensor platform, where you guys are providing the flat base structure, and then from that you can then go out and you can put a bunch of other sensor packages on top of it to do that inspection. What are different sensor packages that you guys put on these, and then what are the different types of maintenance inspections that you guys are covering on a mobile platform?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Spot is a platform, right? So we have an open REST API. If your organization has the wherewithal to be able to talk to the robot via code or integrate hardware, they can work directly with Boston Dynamics. So there is a lot of customers that say, hey, this sensor is particularly important for this application. It changes the trajectory of the ROI on this tool if we can integrate this sensor. But out of the box, what Spot does really well is we have a FLIR thermal camera. We have an acoustic imaging device. We have a LiDAR, and then the robot itself has 5 stereo vision depth cameras. And then we've also integrated a language vision model, which we can talk about. But the advent of generative AI, right? So now customers can walk around, they take a picture of anything happening in their facility, and you can ask a question, what's going on in that picture, and trigger a workflow based on what the outcome is in that picture. So there's sensors, and then there's visual inspections that the robot's doing. Temperature and mechanical inspections. So with that acoustic imager, it's an ultrasonic range. So we're listening for things that the human ear can't hear in really loud environments. So that's all of your air leaks, gas leaks, steam leaks. That same tool also is able to listen to degradation of a bearing. And this is really important because the ultrasonic range is before the accelerometer range. So you get an early detection on a bearing before it fails, well before your accelerometer would pick it up. So those are some of the most common sensors that we see. Of course, there's sensors like, RDI's integrated a sensor. We have gas companies that have integrated sensors so we can detect up to 5 gases at the same time, H2S, ammonia, HF. Some of these get really deep into the weeds around industry specific problems that they're trying to solve with the dog.
Interesting. Okay, that's really impressive. So I'm going into production facilities that are or processing facilities that are using ammonia as a very common chemical. So it can go out there and it can walk through facilities and detect if there was higher. Now would I be able to know what if I'm in a certain room that spot's in? Will it be able to know if it's outside nominal by the location that it's in? So it could walk in a room and say, okay, I'm expecting a higher percentage in here, but if I'm walking into a different room and it's much higher than what it's expected, does that create an alarm then through its navigation?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I mean, one of the things I've seen in this journey that I think is fascinating is the robots understand the world very differently than we do, right? So I mentioned LiDAR and the stereo vision cameras. We are understanding the world at the robotic level differently than we perceive the world today with our senses. But if we tell the robot, hey, in this room, here is the type of equipment, and here's what good should be as a baseline. Yes, you can set thresholds and you can set ranges. So when the robot gets into that area of the map, deploys a sensor, collects data on a piece of equipment, it can tell you with a bunch of different ways, right? So we are connected to a bunch of CMMSs around the world. We can generate a work order based on an anomaly right there. We can also send an email or a text.
So the robot's walking through production floor A, and it could then dial. It could determine there is a task that needs to happen. The robot then will automatically create an assignment and send it to a CMMS for then a maintenance worker to complete.
So the robot's walking around, the robot's walking around a facility. Yep. We have told the robot, the customer has said, hey, I want this robot to deploy its acoustic sensor over here because this is an area where it's prone to leaks. Okay. There's couplings, fittings, etc. If it detects a leak, yes, it will send a workflow to however the customer has it set up. Most often it's going into a data lake, and then it's going into a work order integration. Okay. And one caveat I would say is there's sensors that can detect the presence of a leak, and then there's sensors that can pick up at the granular level a ppm or an LEL, right? So you asked earlier, can it detect ranges and stuff? Yes, more often than not, the customer has it detecting the presence of a leak. Okay. Some customers say, hey, we want to know the exact analysis of said leak.
Got it. And so when I'm looking at the deployment of a spot robot, I always want to know what does the maintenance people who have been doing this process for 20 years, how do they feel about all of a sudden a 4-legged friend walking around the floor next to them? How is that culture, that mindset change when all of a sudden, this little guy is wagging his tail, hopping around the floor?
Yeah, I mean, like any new implementation of technology, it starts with education. It starts with change management. We have to make sure that people are aligned in terms of what is this thing going to do? How does it make my life better? And, this is like the time old thing in automation. It's not here to take your job, right? The dog is not turning wrenches. The dog is not fixing things. The dog is not executing work orders. The dog can help empower you by collecting data in areas where you don't have the time or really don't want to be spending that time. But this is kind of a cool thing. Everyone, 100% of my customers name their dog. More than half of them wrap it, meaning they put a vinyl or a powder coat on it and make it their brand colors. They might slap some of their brand stickers on it. And they hold like a naming contest to say, what do you want to name Spot the robot? The other thing I've seen is, my dad was an engineer his entire life in and out of plants, and bring your kid to work day, right? Like these are things where like organizations can show off this technology to help nurture that next generation. And so it ends up being a really, really compelling piece of technology for reasons like that. But back to your point, you have to get, typically when I'm visiting a plant, yes, is there someone there who's like, I can see it in their eyes, am I going to kick the dog? And that's the person that I'll actually walk up to and say, hey, why don't you drive it? Because once they drive it, I think it really breaks their guard down to say, okay, all right, I understand this thing, while it is autonomous and it's mobile and it's able to walk with its legs, it is still a tool that is working alongside humans. I kind of like to think of it as manufacturer's best friend, kind of like a real dog is to us.
So when we're looking at leadership in organizations, what do leaders really need to reevaluate or rethink when it comes to inspection, technology adoption, and I guess almost changing the way we've done maintenance for a century and in the industrial revolution space? Like what do we need to be doing differently when it comes to technology?
I'll give credit to companies like MaintainX, right? Where they're just the visibility and the awareness because of the data being put into an area where it's easier to work with, right? You mentioned the clipboard. That archaic kind of mentality just doesn't cut it anymore. Your peers down the street are working with new technology. So you have really a choice. I think leadership is pretty aware of this. The other thing too is like, as buzzwordy as it is, AI is driving a lot of awareness into robotics, right? Yeah. So I think one of the things I've seen over the last couple of years is the dog going from not having a semantic understanding of the world to really starting to understand and perceive the world the way that we do, which is empowering more capability, which makes for a faster payback. I think depending on who you talk to in the organization, you're taking a chance on a four-legged friend, right? So it is introducing a new species into the workforce. I think depending on the size of the organization, these executives are looking at labor trends that are 10, 20, 30 years out. And the models that they're sharing with us can be pretty intimidating. So they know that they need to start integrating these species into the workforce. We're not here to talk about humanoids, but I think a lot of executives think one day there's going to be a mixed workforce. Yeah. You don't start there. You don't start with a bipedal mobile manipulator. Every time I take the dog to a plant and I build it in a hotel room, people are still taking pictures, videos. They're typically dancing with it and having a great time. Imagine walking out of a hotel room with a humanoid, right? So there is a difference there, right? And so this dog is kind of the gateway to allowing executives to proliferate some of their workforce with maybe different types of form factors to fill some of these gaps that they see coming.
Yeah, no, I love that. And we're getting close to wrapping up this segment, but a case study. I think you guys have installed over 1,500 of these spots. What's one that just comes to you top of mind that you're proud of, or was a really fun excitement or application? What's one that you guys have seen that's really fun?
Yeah, there's two that I'll share, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So one's a cement plant in the West Coast, and this is a 100-plus-year-old plant in a city. And it's one of those things where if you walk a cement plant, the harshness of the process, there is just things happening all over this area. It's rugged, it's dangerous. There's a lot of mobile large equipment moving through. You might be connected to a quarry nearby. And so these are people that they don't have the time to mess around with a science project. When you go there and you integrate a dog, it has to work.
Yeah.
They're investing in the dog so that they can get more uptime, not less uptime. So that's like, you know, and we got to integrate the dog a couple of years ago and see the change. And this thing was able to prevent a kiln from shutting down. It was able to catch dangerous gases. These are things that the customer told us that without this dog, we would have never caught.
Yeah.
And a kiln shut down. A kiln.
Well, I was gonna say that paid for the dog itself right there.
Yeah, it paid for several dogs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a multi-day 6-7 figure downtime prevention, and so that was massive. The other flip side would be a semiconductor customer where the environment is totally different, right? And they don't deal with hours of downtime. That would be 8-9 figures loss, right? They're so optimized. But what's interesting is that they are still spending a hefty amount every day on contractors and labor to be able to fix pumps all throughout the subfab.
Yeah.
The dog is now able to go down, listen for vibration on those pumps and detect it days or weeks in advance, whereas before they were getting minutes to hours.
Yeah.
Right. So these are really big digital transformation efforts that two totally different types of industries are taking with the same outcome of being a lot more safe and a lot more optimal from a production standpoint.
Man, that's exciting. And I think it's great to show the with those stories the flexibility that robotics is creating these days. Before, robotics was so restricted to known applications, doing known tasks, and all of a sudden the dynamic opportunity that's being created through our four-legged friend Spot is really opening some stuff up. As we wrap things up, John, if people want to get a hold of you and learn more about what Boss Dynamics is doing in the manufacturing space and around maintenance and helping companies drive better productivity on the floor, where do they start?
Best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. I think you know this. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. But I also go to a lot of different shows. I live here in Ohio, so if you're local and you ever want to meet for lunch or coffee, I'm typically open. I do have kids at home, right? So there's life outside of work as well. But you can always reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very open to a conversation.
And you have a spot as well where if you guys have applications that you want to look at, you bring a spot, right? Is that what you do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most customers want to see it is hardware, right? So this isn't just software, but it is software enabled hardware. And so when they're bringing us to site, we have an entire integration process where we will scope an entire site and work with the customer to build their business case. Sometimes part of that evaluation is, can the dog actually navigate my terrain, my unstructured environment where it's dynamic, traffic, multi-story? And can the sensors collect the data from the vantage points where we can safely and reliably and autonomously get to? Can they do that repeatedly, right? So that's sometimes part of that evaluation. I will tell you though, Jake, as the dog becomes more mainstream, people are starting to jump steps, right? I used to always have to visit a plant. Last year, that started to change. Right? We used to sit, now we're sending engineers, they scope a site and we just move forward. So it is actually pretty cool to see the way that the technology adoption broadly is starting to impact the way customers are evaluating the technology.
Awesome. Well, John, really appreciate your time, your expertise in the industry. Amazes me all the time, of course. If you guys have, we were able to get to all the comments and Q&A today, but if you guys have stuff, reach back out to the team here. We'll try and get John on some follow-ups as well. But appreciate John once again, of course. Thanks for everyone here for joining us on another episode of Wrench Factor. We'll see you guys again soon.